Have you ever wondered why the men who rise the highest, leaders, strategists, visionaries, always seem to stand alone? Why they're admired from afar yet rarely welcomed up close? Today we uncover the brutal truth: power and belonging cannot coexist. Power is not merely a possession, it is a gravitational force that rearranges the social universe around a man from the moment he begins to ascend, whether through intelligence, ambition, or the sheer refusal to accept mediocrity. He starts to create an invisible gap between himself and others. This distance is not deliberately imposed. It emerges naturally from the simple fact that the ambitions of the powerful are rarely aligned with the desires of the ordinary. Most people walk straight because the path is familiar. A powerful man deviates because the familiar never leads upward. The moment he steps off the common path, he steps away from the common man. This difference in trajectory forms the first divide. A man who seeks influence must constantly observe, predict, and strategize, while everyone else simply participates in the daily rituals of living. The average person exists within a closed loop of predictable behaviors. He seeks comfort, approval, and belonging. A powerful man cannot indulge in these. He must operate with vigilant independence, which creates a psychological distance far greater than any physical separation. People sense when a man does not depend on their validation, and instead of admiring his independence, they quietly resent it. The human herd relies on mutual dependency. The powerful man breaks this system by placing his trust in calculation rather than companionship. Over time, this independence becomes misinterpreted as aloofness. His self-reliance looks like detachment. His strategic thinking is mistaken for coldness. His refusal to follow the crowd's emotional rhythms labels him as someone different, unreachable, or unpredictable. Yet unpredictability, in the eyes of the ordinary, is dangerous. They cannot forecast his actions or control his choices. And when people cannot predict or control a man, they instinctively distance themselves from him. It is not the powerful man who withdraws. It is the crowd that slowly steps back, creating a widening circle of isolation around him. The distance is further deepened by the way he sees the world. Life for him is a battlefield of opportunities and threats, not a playground of sentiments. He observes the flaws, motivations, and vulnerabilities of others with analytical precision. Meanwhile, most people interact through feelings and reactions. There is an intelligence gap, but more importantly, there is a purpose gap. A man who thinks long-term, who considers consequences before emotions, disrupts the natural emotional flow of social groups. His presence demands others rise to a level of awareness they are unaccustomed to, and instead of rising, they retreat. Additionally, a powerful man must protect his mind from the noise of the crowd. To maintain clarity, he cannot immerse himself in their fears, their gossip, or their petty conflicts. He must cultivate a mental solitude that shields him from influence and stabilizes his judgment. This necessity for solitude, even if it is internal rather than physical, creates the perception that he is not one of them. People feel uncomfortable around someone whose inner world they cannot enter or influence, and their discomfort becomes the foundation of a social distance that grows day by day. The more he ascends, the more the distance widens. His achievements generate admiration publicly, but suspicion privately. People applaud success until it surpasses their ability to relate to it. Admiration slowly shifts into envy, envy into hostility, and hostility into subtle exclusion. He becomes someone to watch, not someone to welcome. People no longer speak to him casually, they speak carefully. They no longer treat him as a peer, they treat him as a symbol. When a man becomes a symbol of ambition, of threat, of possibility, he ceases to be socially accessible. In the end, power creates a natural hierarchy, and hierarchy always creates separation. Those who climb higher breathe a different air, see a different horizon, move according to different calculations. They do not fit into the easy harmony of social circles, because the price of power is the abandonment of comforts that bind the many together. The powerful man's distance is not chosen. It is earned as a side effect of seeing what others refuse to see and pursuing what others fear to attempt. A man who seeks power organizes his life around objectives, not emotions. This reorganization changes everything: how he thinks, how he moves, how he interacts, and ultimately how he is perceived. While others shape their choices based on convenience or comfort, the powerful man shapes his actions based on consequence, leverage, and long-term advantage. This divergence of priorities makes him fundamentally incompatible with those whose lives are governed by short-term desires and emotional impulses. Most people make decisions to feel good now. They want the pleasure of being liked, the comfort of belonging, the simplicity of agreement. The powerful man makes decisions to secure a future result, regardless of how he is perceived in the moment. If he must be disliked today to be unchallenged tomorrow, he accepts it without hesitation. If he must sacrifice comfort to gain position, he does so willingly. The crowd cannot comprehend such thinking because their emotional needs override their strategic awareness. This misunderstanding places the powerful man outside their world. He evaluates relationships based on utility, alignment, and potential outcomes, while others evaluate relationships based on familiarity, warmth, and shared feelings. This creates a deep misinterpretation. People think he is incapable of caring, when in reality, he cares selectively and intelligently. His loyalty is earned through value and consistency, not sentiment. This selective loyalty threatens those who rely on emotional dependence rather than merit. They label him as distant, calculating, or unattached simply because his priorities do not mirror their own. Furthermore, the powerful man is willing to endure discomfort for the sake of progress. He tolerates risk, tension, uncertainty, and pressure, conditions that most people try to escape at all costs. This difference in tolerance levels separates him from the majority. People prefer predictability, he thrives in volatility. People want peace, he seeks positioning. People crave acceptance, he prioritizes advantage. When two minds operate from such opposing motivations, they cannot inhabit the same mental universe. This divergence extends into how he sees time. The average person is trapped in the present moment, reacting to immediate circumstances. The powerful man perceives time as a strategic terrain. He delays gratification, orchestrates outcomes, and makes moves that may not reveal their significance for months or years. Others see only the surface of his actions, not the architecture beneath them. Since they cannot understand the architecture, they falsely assume he acts without feeling or connection. His depth is interpreted as detachment. Another source of isolation is that the powerful man cannot indulge in the emotional chaos that governs group behavior. Gossip, envy, insecurity, and groupthink consume most social spaces. These are distractions he cannot afford. He withdraws, not to hide, but to think clearly. Yet to the emotionally dependent, withdrawal looks like arrogance or dismissal. People become offended when a man values his mind more than their approval. They take his focus personally, never realizing it has nothing to do with them. His priorities force him to live in a mental landscape where few can follow. When people gather to talk, he gathers information. When they seek validation, he seeks opportunity. When they chase entertainment, he chases influence. His conversations differ, his interests differ, his concerns differ. People sense this difference and feel threatened by it. Not because he harms them, but because he reminds them of what they are not willing to pursue. Over time, this psychological divergence solidifies into social separation. The powerful man becomes a foreign presence, someone admired from afar, but not invited into the inner circles of ordinary life. His mindset intimidates those who prefer comfort, and his priorities unsettle those who rely on emotional consensus. It is not his ambition that isolates him, but the incompatibility between his goals and the desires of the world around him. Human nature operates on a simple principle. People fear what they cannot predict and resent what they cannot control. A powerful man embodies both traits. His strength makes him difficult to influence, and his independence makes him impossible to dominate. This combination evokes suspicion even before he speaks or acts. His presence alone disrupts the unspoken hierarchy that ordinary people rely on for psychological safety. Most individuals feel comfortable when everyone around them mirrors their weaknesses. They bond over shared fears, shared doubts, and shared limitations. But when a man displays an unusual degree of confidence, clarity, or composure, he breaks this unspoken pact. He becomes a reminder of untapped potential, a challenge to the comfortable narrative that mediocrity is acceptable. Instead of inspiring admiration, this reminder often provokes unease. People instinctively question the intentions of someone who appears stronger than the group. Suspicion grows because strength allows a man to operate without seeking permission or validation. When he does not need approval, people begin to wonder why. When he does not rely on social acceptance, they question what supports him. Independence looks like secrecy to those who have never experienced it. Strategic silence appears manipulative to those who rely on emotional expression. Discipline is mistaken for coldness, and confidence is mistaken for hidden agendas. The powerful man's ability to conceal his weaknesses or emotions intensifies this suspicion. While others express their vulnerabilities openly to gain sympathy or connection, he guards his inner world carefully. This protection is not deceit, it is survival. Yet others interpret this guarded nature as evidence of hidden motives. They cannot accept that a man can think without speaking, plan without revealing, or endure without complaining. The unfamiliar becomes threatening. This suspicion is amplified by the fact that a strong man disrupts the balance of social power. In any group, people unconsciously form hierarchies based on perceived strength, influence, and confidence. When a powerful man enters the dynamic, he shifts the hierarchy without effort. His presence forces others to reevaluate their position, and this revaluation creates discomfort. People begin to fear he will outrank them, overshadow them, or replace them, even if he has no such intention. Their insecurity invents threats where none exist. Suspicion also arises because strength is often associated with ambition, and ambition is associated with unpredictability. People believe that a man who wants more will eventually disrupt the current order. They fear he might challenge their authority, expose their incompetence, or outgrow their control. Thus, even before he acts, they prepare defenses. Some distance themselves quietly. Others gossip to undermine him. Some challenge him openly in an attempt to test his resolve. They do not distrust him because he has done something wrong. They distrust him because he is capable of doing something they cannot predict. Moreover, a powerful man does not react emotionally to insults, threats, or pressure. His calmness unsettles people who rely on emotional cues to navigate interactions. When he does not show fear, they suspect he is hiding something. When he does not show anger, they fear his silence. When he does not break under pressure, they imagine he must have some hidden advantage. In reality, his strength comes from discipline, not deception, but people convince themselves otherwise. The suspicion deepens further when they realize they cannot manipulate him. Flattery does not sway him. Shame does not weaken him. Isolation does not intimidate him. These are the tools ordinary people use to control one another, and when a man is immune to them, he becomes an anomaly, a force outside the psychological systems that govern most social interactions. This anomaly is treated not with curiosity, but with caution. People begin to watch him, analyze him, speculate about him. They build narratives around his silence, assign motives to his actions, and exaggerate the significance of his smallest decisions. Their suspicion becomes a collective myth, shared through whispers and sideways glances. The stronger he becomes, the more these narratives spread, because people feel safer believing he is dangerous rather than admitting they are intimidated. Suspicion is not a reaction to his behavior, but to his potential. People fear what he could do, because they know what they would do if they possessed his strength. They project their own corruption onto him, assuming he seeks control because they would seek control. Thus, the powerful man lives under the shadow of suspicions that originate not from his actions, but from the insecurities of those around him. Man, who sees beyond the present, naturally separates himself from those who live only within it. Vision requires a mind capable of holding multiple possibilities, imagining future consequences, and calculating pathways invisible to the ordinary eye. Such a man cannot afford to be governed by the shallow desires of social approval. His allegiance is to the future he intends to build, not to the emotions of the moment. This allegiance isolates him long before his vision ever becomes reality. Most people crave acceptance because acceptance offers immediate emotional relief. They want to be liked, validated, and included. Their self-worth is tied to how others respond to them. But a visionary measures himself not by applause but by progress. He evaluates his choices based on their strategic worth, not their popularity. This difference in evaluation creates a distance between him and the crowd. While they seek harmony, he seeks direction. While they avoid conflict, he confronts obstacles. While they treasure comfort, he welcomes challenge. A man driven by vision does not speak the same language as the crowd. He speaks in terms of outcomes, not feelings. He focuses on cause and effect, not approval and disapproval. His mind is tuned to opportunity, not acceptance. This difference confuses those who judge the world emotionally rather than strategically. They cannot understand why he ignores praise, dismisses criticism, or continues forward even when misunderstood. His indifference to their opinions feels like rejection, though it is simply necessity. This tension increases when he begins making choices that contradict the expectations of others. Visionaries often create their own rules, their own timing, and their own definitions of success. They see potential where others see risk. They see transformation where others see disruption. They see what could be, not merely what is. This ability makes them unpredictable in the eyes of those who measure life by stability and familiarity. And unpredictability breeds distancing. People become uneasy around a man who prioritizes purpose over their approval because it means he cannot be easily influenced. He does not adjust his direction to fit their comfort. He does not water down his ambition to fit their limitations. He does not slow his ascent to match their pace. To those who depend on emotional coordination within a group, this independence feels like betrayal. They want a man who blends in, not one who rises above. The visionary also becomes isolated because he refuses to be trapped by nostalgia. While others cling to the past for identity or security, he views the past only as data. He does not worship tradition unless it serves progress. People often mistake this for disrespect, but it is simply clarity. A man who seeks the future cannot be held hostage by the emotional weight of what came before. This forward-thinking mindset distances him from those who find comfort in repetition and familiarity. His solitude deepens when he experiences the turning point. Every visionary faces the realization that not everyone is meant to understand him. The further he projects into the future, the fewer people can follow. Complex ideas rarely survive environments built on shallow concerns. The crowd judges him by today, while he is planning for years ahead. Their timelines are too short to appreciate the value of his decisions, and their fears are too loud to hear the quiet logic that guides him. Additionally, vision demands sacrifice: time, energy, relationships, and sometimes reputation. The crowd does not understand sacrifice unless it offers immediate reward. When they see a man willingly endure hardship for a distant goal, they view him as obsessive, strange, or unbalanced. They assume something must be wrong with him for choosing difficulty over ease. Their misunderstanding further isolates him, but he moves forward regardless because approval would only slow him down. The visionary's independence becomes even more threatening when he begins to succeed. Success exposes the limitations of others. It reveals who lacked courage, who lacked discipline, who lacked foresight. People resent being reminded of their wasted potential. Instead of admitting they chose comfort, they convince themselves the visionary must have cheated, manipulated, or schemed his way forward. The more success he achieves, the more accusations and judgments arise, not because of what he did, but because of what others failed to do. This dynamic cements the visionary's isolation. He cannot fit into a world that demands conformity. He cannot shrink himself to soothe insecurities. He cannot betray his future to satisfy the present. His path is inherently solitary because vision, by its nature, demands a man detached from the collective illusions that bind others together. Belonging offers comfort, but comfort is the enemy of ambition. A man who seeks power must eventually realize that every social circle, every group expectation, and every demand for conformity is a potential cage. The pressure to fit in forces a man to dilute his instincts, restrain his ambitions, and suppress his strategic nature. Belonging requires obedience, subtle, constant, and often invisible. For a powerful man, obedience is too costly a price. The desire to belong is rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of standing alone against the unknown. But a man who aims to rise cannot afford fear. Belonging tempts him with emotional warmth, while quietly demanding his independence. It tells him he must soften his edges, silence his doubts, and ignore his instincts to maintain harmony. Each concession seems small, but together they erode his power. A man who compromises to be liked eventually becomes a man who is controlled. Social groups impose expectations, spoken or unspoken. They dictate how a man should think, speak, and behave to remain accepted. These expectations protect the group's comfort, not the individual's potential. A powerful man sees these expectations for what they are and attempts to domesticate his strength. When he refuses to submit, he is labeled difficult, arrogant, or uncooperative. These labels are weapons used to pressure him back into conformity. Belonging also breeds emotional dependency. A man who relies on approval becomes predictable. Predictability makes him controllable. Controllability makes him harmless. The powerful man recognizes this chain and rejects it. He cannot allow his identity to be shaped by the opinions of those who fear what he might become if he stopped seeking their approval. He does not want to be harmless. He wants to be capable. The trap of belonging becomes most dangerous when it appeals to a man's desire for companionship. Loneliness is a powerful force, and the world uses it to keep men small. But a man who fears solitude will never act boldly. He will restrain himself out of fear that others might disapprove. He will limit his potential to maintain acceptance. The crowd rewards his compliance with temporary warmth, but punishes any sign of independence with rejection. The powerful man understands that belonging is offered conditionally, and the conditions always demand the surrender of something essential. There is also a strategic danger. When a man belongs too deeply, the group gains leverage over him. They influence his emotions, shape his decisions, and dictate the boundaries of his behavior. His identity becomes entangled with theirs. If the group collapses, so does he. If the group turns against him, he loses everything. Dependency is not power. It is vulnerability disguised as connection. A powerful man refuses these vulnerabilities. He maintains a psychological distance even when he engages socially. He participates without attaching. He listens without absorbing. He speaks without revealing his entire mind. This distance protects his autonomy and preserves his ability to act according to his own will. People sense this detachment and often interpret it as lack of loyalty. But loyalty is not defined by emotional dependence. It is defined by consistency of action and intent. The more a powerful man rises, the less he fits into the emotional structures that unify the crowd. His goals exceed their fears. His clarity exposes their confusion. His ambition disrupts their complacency. They feel threatened by his independence because it undermines the illusions that make them feel secure. To preserve their comfort, they push him outward. They call him too serious, too focused, too intense. But these traits are not flaws. They are the qualities that elevate him. He does not fight to belong because belonging would require him to diminish himself. He accepts the distance because the price of fitting in is too high. A man who seeks power cannot allow the crowd to shape his identity or dictate his choices. He walks alone not because he rejects others, but because he refuses to be trapped by the invisible chains that belonging places around a man's potential.